Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi, Dato. Hi, Haji Fauzis.
Hi,
So,
evening.
yes. Okay. So, I hope you all enjoyed the video. We have a couple of views on Facebook Live and we have participants who have joined in. So, let's start the program. So, salam sejahtera dan selamat datang everyone to this program which is Jom Sembang Air or Let's Talk Water. Program ini dianjurkan bersama oleh Forum Air Malaysia, FOMCA and WeCam. So if you all want to know more, who are these organizations, please check them out so that you will understand what they are doing. So you may need help from them one day. I'm requesting the organizer to share the links for this organization in both Facebook Live, Forum Air Malaysia, dan juga in Zoom chat. So you can actually access to them. So what is the theme of this program? The entire design of this program is to dissect the issues related to water disruption, to understand the water disruption, and to go behind the scenes because a lot of activity happens at the back, which public generally do not know. Therefore, this program consists of 3 series dengan sejumlah 9 panel perbincangan. Bagi siri pertama, we are going to talk about bagi siri pertama dan panel pertama, which is today, we're going to go on understanding water disruption from social perspective. Siri pertama ni membongkar rahsia gangguan air, tapi bukan rahsia gosip ya. So we really want to go on the facts, science-based, knowledge-based information, and we want to unbundle this water disruption. That is what the entire series 1 is all about. So in this series, we will have 4 panel discussions. So today's panel discussion, you can see the panelists here. We will talk about social perspective. Next one on economic perspective. Third one is understanding disruptions, which is jenis gangguan, mekanisme untuk menangani isu gangguan dan juga consumer complaints. What are the communication plans put in place? And the final discussion panel in this series will be what are the punca gangguan bekalan air. So this is what we will cover in the 4 panel discussions. Before I introduce you to all these 3 panels that is right now facing you, let me do a bit of housekeeping. So I want to just make sure the audio and video are clear both in Facebook as well as Zoom. So jika audio and video is clear, please give thumbs up or just type yes in the comment box. I appreciate that. So at least the organizer knows everyone can hear us loud and clear. Otherwise, do let us know. So without wasting time, I want to introduce Dato' Mah Weng Kai. So really, Dato' Mah Weng Kai, is a privilege for us to have you here. I find that Dato' Mah Weng Kai is a balancing act between what is right and what is fair. Because Dato' Mah Weng Kai is a retired judge of the Court of Appeal. So he have years of experience dealing with what's right, what's not. So that is amazing. And currently, he is a commissioner for Suhakam, Suruhanjaya Hak Asasi Manusia, and a commissioner with MAFCOM, Malaysian Aviation Commission. And he is also a legal consultant and arbitrator. So he's not, upon retirement, I believe Dato' has been a busier person. So welcome Dato'. Our second panel, Tuan Haji Fauzi. He is a water veteran. Bukan 1-2 tahun ya, is 25 years experience. I've been working with Renhill SAJH, Syarikat Air Johor. And really, if you look at his resume, he covered the entire spectrum from internal audit up to customer service. So we're really glad to have you here, probably with 25 years of experience and various segments of the company that you have worked will be a valuable wealth of information that you can share today. And currently, he's a head of division in Renhill Syarikat Air Johor. And finally is our consumer champion, Miss Sarah. Miss Sarah is currently president for Forum Air Malaysia. But before that, for 15 over years, she was in the private sector, focusing on quality control. And after that, for about 6 years, she was dealing with standard development, as well as policy development at national and international level under the ambit of standard users. So we really have combined dengan saya, I am Punita Nuk Naidu, the moderator here today. I think combined we may have about 100 years worth of experience. So I do hope you will bring some value to the people who are listening both via Facebook Live. Please share and tag Forum Air Malaysia and the participants in the Zoom. So before we go into the first question, I just like to put a shout out to all the participants, all the listeners, as well as the panelists. Access to safe and clean water, is it a privilege or is it a basic right? Adakah akses kepada air bersih dan selamat is a hak istimewa that we as Malaysians have, or is it hak asasi yang kita boleh demand daripada kerajaan? So what's your take, Ms. Sarah? Privilege or basic right?
I will say as a consumer, it's a consumer rights. It's not only consumer rights, it's human rights. Hak asasi manusia. Definitely I would say that. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Sarah very firm on that. Yes, Haji Fauzi, privilege or basic right?
Okay, kita daripada perspektif operator bekalan air, okay, kita melihat memangnya air merupakan satu keperluan asas bagi setiap orang lah. Consider human right, but both party kena main peranan untuk memastikan hak asasi ini sentiasa dapat dibekalkan.
Yes, okay. Datuk Mang.
Thank you for that interesting question to start with. Well, I think firstly, our source of water is of course from the rain. And I think this is nature's blessing that we are able to receive rain as compared to areas which are always dry and or in desert areas where there's no rain. And the other point is that having had that as a blessing and a privilege to have rain, what has become then, of course, is the acquisition of that privilege becomes a right. And it is a human right because we are talking about right to life. Without water, you can't have life. And very importantly, I would like to stress is that it's not just access to water, it must be access to clean water so that we can all remain healthy. So it's both a privilege and a right. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. One good thing is I always love to start a panel discussion with a common ground. So we have an understanding there. So let's hear what the listeners and audience have to say. Let us know whether you think it's basic rights or it is a right that the government of the day must give the people a basic right, privilege or basic. And my first question to Ms. Sarah. So really, the last year we have seen major water disruptions in Selangor. And these water disruptions was compounded with a lot of complaint in social media, right? So I'm really wondering how significant this outcry in the social media. Is it really water disruptions has been that severe, or is it due to COVID-19 pandemic with MCO, everyone are restrained and homebound, so the only outlet they have is social media platform. So they actually vented out their displeasure in general of the situation. And with the water disruption, it became a convenient space to provide this venting.
Thank you for the question. Actually, it's eye-opening. Actually, I can say, last year I can say it is year of water crisis. Okay, so what Forum IA did is actually we collected this data from major newspapers. Okay, then we found that it's both unscheduled and scheduled water disruption. So I can say this water disruption, okay, is actually a highlight to the consumers. There are 27 cases last year in Selangor that we picked up, which is major affected areas. From these 27 cases, 16 cases was actually involving pipe breakage, pipe pecah. Okay, then we also found out like pencemaran sumber air. Pencemaran sumber air, major ones is like around 9 cases. Okay, there was one special incident also where in wilayah Petaling, okay, where this there was a penurunan in aras air in one of the kolam air Kota Damansara. Okay, I could say this is because based on what paper was captured, is actually due to high demand. okay, and affected 74 account holders. And basically what we can see last year, okay, during COVID, okay, Forum Air released on water disruption. It's really a sadful event. Yeah, people don't have job. Yeah, and they need to struggle to get money to survive, and they also need to struggle to get water. And I would say like it not much affected to those landed houses, but those that are living in high-rise building, yeah, how they carry the water up. So I wouldn't say because of COVID all this happens. It happens during COVID. It made it very worse incident that we can say. So I'm very happy to see Selangor government is taking many actions. That is for Selangor water disruption, and I'm sure that other water operators throughout Malaysia can take similar action to ensure that consumer will have supply of clean water and sanitation continuously. That is our goal actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. On that, Haji Fauzi, I would like to explore we know that Selangor was really on above the radar with all the disruption. How did Renhir Syarikat Air Johor manage to be under the radar and satisfy the consumer needs? Because there doesn't seem to be a lot of disruptions in Johor State. So how did you manage it?
Thank you, Ms. Punita. Okay. Alhamdulillah, we are in Johor especially for last year. We tak ada experience untuk gangguan bekalan air yang berskala besar lah. Jadi kalau kita melihat dari segi gangguan bekalan air ni, dia terbahagi kepada dua lah. Satu gangguan yang terancang kita panggil, dan satu lagi ialah gangguan yang tidak dirancang. Bagi gangguan yang dirancang, biasanya kita akan merancang untuk kerja-kerja penyelenggaraan dan sebagainya. Dan biasanya dari segi SOP-nya kita perlu mendapatkan kelulusan daripada pihak Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Air Negara before kita melaksanakan apa-apa kerja-kerja penyelenggaraan yang akan membawa kesan kepada gangguan bekalan air. Jadi di dalam gangguan bekalan air terancang, biasanya kita tidak menghadapi masalah yang besar kerana kita orang kata 100% ready untuk menangani isu-isu berkaitan dengan pembekalan air. Dan biasanya untuk kerja-kerja terancang juga kita akan memastikan kerja-kerja dapat disiapkan mengikut jadual, dan biasanya gangguan juga tidak akan melebihi untuk tempoh 24 jam. Jadi time ni sangat-sangat penting dalam kita mengurus bekalan air untuk memastikan bekalan air tidak terputus untuk keperluan pelanggan-pelanggan kita. Jadi yang keduanya ialah gangguan-gangguan yang tidak terancang. Ini biasanya kebanyakannya berpunca daripada dua sebab utama. Yang pertamanya mungkin berpunca daripada sumber bekalan air itu sendiri, iaitu kita punya water resource problem. Dan yang kedua disebabkan oleh kegagalan infrastruktur bekalan air beroperasi dengan sepatutnya, contohnya kerosakan dari segi pam ataupun mungkin kejadian pipe pecah dan sebagainya. Tapi biasanya untuk gangguan-gangguan bekalan air yang disebabkan oleh kegagalan infrastruktur ini, dia tidak melibatkan satu kawasan yang terlalu luas berbanding dengan sekiranya ianya berpunca daripada sumber bekalan air itu sendiri. Jadi kalau kita lihat dalam mana-mana operator bekalan air di negara kita ini, kita memang paling takut ialah gangguan bekalan air yang tidak terancang. Ini yang memang paling kita takut. Kalau gangguan yang tidak terancang ini membebankan pelanggan-pelanggan kita, maka saya rasa beban itu lebih besar lagi pada kita sebagai pengendali perkhidmatan. Dan biasanya dalam keadaan-keadaan ini, biasa kita kerja overnight dan tanpa rehat untuk memastikan kita dapat memulihkan bekalan air secepat yang mungkin. Tapi macam kita kata, dalam kita mengurus ini, kita juga ada limitation yang seharusnya dapat kita uruskan dengan sebaik mungkin. Saya rasa itu dulu untuk pengenalan kita pada sesi ini. Gambaran tentang gangguan bekalan air ini iaitu sama ada ianya dirancang ataupun gangguan yang tidak dirancang. Okay, terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Haji Fauzi. Talking about that, Datuk Ma, I think one key thing that we want to establish is the social construct, because are we expecting too much? See, because there's a balancing act between what is basic rights as well as what is consumer right. That there should be some distinctive difference. So in terms of that, from your experience, do you feel like there's no lack of, in terms of human rights perspective, the water supply, access to safe and clean water supply in Malaysia is sufficient? So this disruption do you consider this as infringing into those basic human rights, or do you think this is one-off incidents that cannot be considered as that?
Sure, thank you. Well, as I was mentioning just now, that we get our source of water supply from the rain, and of course this will be through the rivers and the lakes and so on, where they are stored. Now, I think what is really important is that we should realize that very often we all take the supply of water for granted. We take it for granted that when we turn on the tap, there will be water. And the moment we don't have water in the tap, then all the alarm bells will go off, and we are then pointing fingers. So I think there are two ways of looking at it. Number one is that if it is a management problem, let's say because a lot of processed water is lost through broken pipes or through vandalism and so on, then that is something which is not permanent. That's something which can be repaired. It's doable. The other, of course, is that when we have a shutdown for days because of contamination of water supply through the very unsavory acts of polluters when they dump material into the water source, toxic pollutants and so on, then there's no choice but to close off the water treatment plants and so on. So in those instances, I think the full force of the law must be made to bear on these polluters, because they are affecting the livelihood, not just life, but livelihood of everybody who is wanting to have water. And so I think it's this question of taking things for granted, where we think that this is a right, we treat it as a right, but the moment we don't have it, then we start thinking, gee, who has now interfered with our rights? And do we have any recourse, any way to remedy this? And I think that's where the long arm of the law has to be, we have to look towards the law for redress. The earlier point about Ms. Punita, you mentioned about whether there was more disruption of water supply during COVID. I think that's a very interesting point, because maybe because of COVID, especially during MCO1, we all had no choice but to stay home. And so we were more aware of things happening around the house. And we are reminded all the time, wash your hands, change your clothes more often, have your showers more often, and so on. And then you don't have a water supply. So I suppose the problem gets focused. But then I really think there's no excuse for any more interruptions because of COVID. There shouldn't be any increased disruption, simply because if the disruption was due to contamination during COVID, and there was a shutdown and everybody was not able to carry on with their commercial activities and so on, then logically there should have been less contamination in the water supply. There should be less disruption. But as it turned out that, as you were mentioning, Ms. Sarah, I'm really surprised at the number of cases in Selangor. 27 cases last year. That's a very high number. Then the question really is, what is it that the authorities are doing to to enforce the law to ensure that there's no what you call little or less cases of pollution, and therefore less cases of interruption. So that's my take on it. I think if it is a scheduled a turn off of water in the tap, that's acceptable because work needs to be done. But if it is an unscheduled, we have to see why. Thank you.
Okay. Now that we're talking about state, even though we are trying not to compare one state with the other, I really would like to know which state are you residing right now. So to the listeners, please put in the chat box, which state are you in? So we really would like to see from where people are listening. Sometimes when states, residents of a state that have more problem will have more interest to understand these situations. So we would like to see, please put it in the chat box. And if you have any questions, please share the questions in the Q&A box. We will be picking up questions from the Q&A box. Coming back to the social perspective of it, Datuk Ma did raise a valid point. Would love to hear from Haji Fauzi and Ms. Sarah from the context of social perspective. One key thing happens is di Malaysia kita tak jalan 5 kilometer or 10 kilometer to get water, to get clean water supply. Kita tak payah guna pump tangan as how it happens in negara-negara, some of the countries. Like for example, 30% of the population of the world don't even have clean water access. We are blessed in that sense. 24 jam, 1 hari, 7 hari seminggu kita memang ada air, kecuali bila masa disruption. Which means kita dah biasa dengan satu keadaan yang water abundance. When we open the tap, there's water. We are used to this context of living. Mesti mandi kurang-kurang 2 kali sehari, right? And then we cuci kereta, we just gyros. That is part of our life. So really to say that, looking from social angle, when we do not have that access, it actually sort of like creates stress. People may not be able to go to work sebab not everyone can go to work tak mandi. Right? Because we Malaysians, our weather and our lifestyle, kurang-kurang 2 kali kena mandi. Kalau tak mandi, maybe tak pergi kerja. So there is a loss that I feel like not being measured. What kind of losses we have? Probably, I wouldn't say a good thing. In the scenario of, last year, when all this disruption happened, people were living at home. So there's a lot of outcry. So there's no issue of people absenting from work in that sense. Tapi imagine let's forget about Selangor for once. In general perspective, these are disruptions that we face. Children may not be able to go to school. So that brings us to a conversation, not about a special year or difficult year like last year. In general, are our disruptions so great that it actually disrupt our social construct that kita kena risau? Atau this is something yang kita can manage as how we are doing, or do you feel something must be done about it? Let's forget about the 27 disruptions in Selangor for once, because I think that is not that is an anomaly kepada kita punya situasi water industry. Water industry kita is not bad. In fact, we are being recognized worldwide as one of the countries with fantastic. In fact, tak silap saya, in Malaysia we have almost access to clean water is almost 98%. So we are really good in that sense. So I'm really wondering, do you feel there is a social disruption in average situation when we have water disruption that requires significant changes to be put in place? Ms. Sarah, if you can start off.
Okay, I can say, yeah, there is a lot of water disruption last year, which we shouldn't talk about it because for this year, it's already going to be March. Cross my finger, there wasn't any water disruption. Yeah, and I can say that, water disruption really plays an important role in on humans' life, because I can say because of human rights, and it's very important. Water is life. Okay, you can't appreciate water when you don't carry the water by yourself. Okay, as what Ms. Punita was saying, like, in Africa, people are travel like 10 kilometers walking, carrying their water, and they appreciate their water. But we I can't compare Africa and us because we are, a developing country. Okay, we're supposed to have such infrastructure that can meet, can overcome all this, disruption and all that. And at the same time, okay, I can say that definitely, are we paying a fair price, for water that been treated and send it to us? Yeah, compared to what I can say to our neighboring country. Yeah, like Philippines, for an example, they are paying 2 ringgit per liter, per 1,000 liter of water. Okay, and we are paying only 52 cents. Okay, but how much we are paying to treat the water is around 2 ringgit and 31 cents. Okay, but this is actually I'm taking an average figure. Okay, and who's going to pay the rest? Okay, for that money that been spent by the water operators. So this is the one that causing money to treat, of course, water, money to repair the pipes, and but I feel like it's really unfair. Everything need to be paid by consumers. Okay, 52 cents is something very cheap, and I already live with it, since I'm young. So now you are increasing, the water price. So is it fair for the consumers to, to pay? So do we have any other way to do it? Okay, do we have any fund, we can create, to accumulate this money that can pay those that couldn't pay the B40, for an example? Can we get them to be like, no need to pay the increase of the water treatment money they're supposed to pay? And I would also question to the water operators, like, okay, let's say we agree to pay. Can you give me 100% sureness, okay, that the water won't be disrupted? Or can you pay us some kind of a refundable kind of thing? In every disruption, can you pay us some money back? These are the questions that, usually consumers raising up. Okay, and of course, where's the room for them to address this, complaint, whether there is a water disruption or that, whether their voice been heard. Okay, yeah, there is water disruption, and we just wait, when the water supply is going to be restored. Yeah, but yeah, it's just waiting. And yeah, I hope that what Ms. Punita was saying, that 2020 we just forget about it and we start with the new year. Yeah.
No, not really. We forget about 2020, but I feel like to judge the industry based on one specific year, which is an anomaly, we have never seen such situation before, will be quite will not give a true reflection. Kalau pada saya, kalau if policy decisions or regulatory decisions or even other kind of communication plans are designed based on an anomaly tahun yang memang luar biasa, gangguan luar biasa dan berhari-hari, it's not 1 or 2 days, kemungkinan besar dia tidak memberi true representation of how to solve the problems in the industry. And socially, there was a lot of, pada pandangan saya, a lot of issues seems to be appearing in social media. So the pressure was coming from the outcry in the social media, really. So that's the reason that want to understand really, for example, daripada Haji Fauzi's perspective, you deal with consumers. When consumers complain in relation to water disruption and you actually going to the ground, ke tapak untuk address their problem, right? Do you really feel socially their way of living is disrupted, or is it more of inconvenienced? That is something that I'm trying to understand. So sama ada mereka sekarang tak selesa because instead of mandi 2 kali terpaksa mandi sekali, instead of like using X amount of water, atau bila cuci pinggan mangkuk menggunakan air daripada pilih, dia terpaksa collect the air and cuci. What actually disrupting them so much? You have, especially macam daripada Haji Fauzi's perspective, you have gone to the ground dealing with the people. What do you face in terms of that, pada mereka?
Terima kasih. Sememangnya sekiranya berlaku gangguan bekalan air, dia akan memberi impak sosial yang agak ketara di kalangan pelanggan-pelanggan kita. Dan ini dapat kita lihat daripada aduan-aduan yang kita terima, cara mereka meluahkan perasaan dan sebagainya. Kita dapat merasai tekanan yang dihadapi oleh pelanggan-pelanggan kita sekiranya berlaku gangguan bekalan air yang berpanjangan. Jadi macam kita di peringkat pemberi perkhidmatan, kita akan sentiasa cuba sedaya upaya kita untuk memastikan bekalan air sentiasa dapat kita sampaikan kepada pelanggan-pelanggan kita dalam apa keadaan sekalipun. Sebab tu kalau kita lihat kita di bawah Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Negara, sekiranya kita ada gangguan bekalan air yang berskala besar, kebanyakan operator bekalan air daripada negeri-negeri yang lain akan datang membantu dengan menghantar tanker dan sebagainya untuk mengurangkan tekanan sosial di kalangan pelanggan-pelanggan yang terlibat dengan gangguan bekalan air. Dan untuk makluman, bantuan-bantuan ini semuanya secara percuma kita hantar. Dengan lori-lori tangki, dengan tangki-tangki statik berserta dengan workforce sekali. Kita akan hantar ke negeri-negeri yang berkenaan untuk membantu. Sebab kita tahu, sekiranya gangguan bekalan air berskala besar berlaku untuk satu tempoh yang agak lama, ianya akan memberi tekanan bukan sahaja di kalangan kepada pelanggan-pelanggan yang berkenaan, kepada konsumer-konsumer yang terlibat, tetapi juga kepada operator itu sendiri. Kerana kita percaya daripada pengalaman kita, sekiranya gangguan bekalan air ini berlaku, operator antara pihak yang paling tertekan dalam mengurus bekalan air dengan sebaik mungkin. Dan macam saya katakan tadi, kalau dari segi kos operasi kita memang akan jauh lebih tinggi sekiranya kita menghadapi satu-satu gangguan bekalan air. Yang pertama, air yang kita edarkan memang kita beri secara percuma lah. Walaupun mungkin tidak semewah macam hari-hari tanpa gangguan. Tapi sekurang-kurangnya air yang kita hantar itu sepatutnya mencukupi untuk keperluan asas kita dalam tempoh gangguan bekalan air. Jadi kita bayangkan berapa banyak lori-lori tangki akan bergerak untuk menghantar air sekiranya berlaku gangguan bekalan air, yang mana lori-lori tangki ini juga perlu mengambil air di satu tempat yang ditetapkan. Dan kadang-kadang berlaku queue dekat situ untuk kita filling station kita, untuk lori-lori tanker mengisi air dan menghantar. Sedangkan satu lori tanker mungkin baru 9 meter padu, 7 meter padu, 5 meter padu. Sekali bergerak dalam masa yang sekejap dah kosong dan balik ke filling station dan sebagainya. Jadi kalau kita lihat ini sangat-sangat membenarkan, dan kita sendiri telah mengingatkan semua anggota-anggota kita yang terlibat supaya mereka dapat mengawal emosi-emosi mereka. Yalah, kita boleh bayangkan dia mungkin dah tak tidur sehari dua hari, bekerja tanpa henti, sampai rumah nak isi air kena maki pula. Dan kita pun tak boleh nak salahkan pelanggan-pelanggan kita kerana mereka tertekan kerana ketiadaan air. Sebab tu kita amat-amat menjaga supaya tidak berlaku, orang kata, provokasi sama ada kepada anggota kita ataupun kepada pelanggan-pelanggan kita. Jadi biasanya kita akan pastikan anggota-anggota yang menghantar ini adalah anggota-anggota yang terlatih. Sebab tu jarang-jarang kita dengar anggota-anggota daripada mana-mana operator bekalan air bergaduh dengan pelanggan-pelanggan semasa dia menghantar air. Walaupun kadang-kadang pukul 2 pagi, 3 pagi, dan kena marah pula kenapa hantar air pukul 3 pagi. Kita hantar 3 pagi itu sebab dah tak cukup siang. Kita terpaksa hantar air round the clock, tanpa henti untuk memastikan tiada orang yang tidak mendapat bekalan air. Cuma kalau kita lihat dalam keadaan-keadaan ini, kita juga mengharapkan kerjasama daripada pelanggan-pelanggan kita juga supaya dalam keadaan itu mereka juga dapat menyesuaikan penggunaan air dalam keadaan-keadaan yang kritikal dengan mengutamakan untuk keperluan-keperluan asas sahaja. Jadi ini amat penting. Jadi kalau kita tengok kadang-kadang ada orang yang menunggu lori dengan tangki yang cukup besar dan dia tak bagi lori bergerak selagi tak penuh tangki dia. Jadi keadaan ini yang kadang-kadang bila kita ni akan timbul masalah. Patutnya satu lori boleh hantar 30 rumah, baru rumah ke-10 dah kosong dah lori tangki kita. Jadi ini akan menyebabkan ramai orang-orang yang sedang menunggu tak dapat air. Ini akan lebih meninggalkan kesan sosial dari segi emosi kepada pelanggan-pelanggan kita. Tapi kalau kita lihat gangguan bekalan air yang tidak terancang ini biasanya berpunca macam saya kata tadi awal daripada dua keadaan. Yang pertama disebabkan oleh punca bekalan air itu sendiri, yang itu memang susah kita nak tangani. Dan yang kedua daripada segi kegagalan infrastruktur kita sendiri. Jadi ramai orang bertanya pada kita, dah tahu paip tu selalu pecah, kenapa tak tukar paip tu? Yang ini yang kita berbalik kepada Misaral tadi beritahu, adakah kita telah membayar dengan harga yang berpatutan untuk perkhidmatan bekalan air yang kita terima sekarang, kan? Jadi kalau kita bayangkan, walaupun di Johor ni yang dikatakan tarif yang tertinggi lah di Malaysia ni, tetapi daripada survey yang kita buat, kita untuk makluman tiap-tiap tahun kita engage consultant untuk buat perception survey. Dan daripada survey kita terkejut. Lebih daripada 80% daripada pengguna air di Johor, dia kata dia sanggup bayar lebih daripada apa yang dia bayar sekarang, asalkan perkhidmatan air yang dibekalkan dapat dibekalkan secara berterusan tanpa gangguan. Jadi maknanya,
Haji Fauzi, on that note, I would like to pose a question to all the audience and listeners. Are you willing, how much higher you are willing to pay to have uninterrupted, clean and safe water supply 24 hours a day and 7 days a week? So that is something that I would like to pose to all the listeners. So please put in the comment and chat box. And I want to bring the topic that Haji Fauzi was talking about to Datuk Mas' attention. So Datuk, really I'm wondering, are we addressing, are we truly understanding the social needs and how to manage it? Or have Malaysians become so sensitive that what is convenience or higher than basic rights is now demanded as basic human rights? Or does basic human rights shift according to the country? That means what is considered as a basic right or what is a basic human right, let's say in a country that far less privileged than us, for us is far higher. Because I really feel like from this, right, there seems to be like there is a lack of focus on the social construct of it to understand from social perspective and how to mitigate this kind of unhappiness yang Haji Fauzi was sharing.
Thank you. Firstly, I think an approach to a question that deals with social perspective, I think it must be discussed together with the economic perspective as well. Because we talk about things which are affecting society, the economy and the economics of things have a very big role to play. For example, you have water disruption. And why is it that we always see long queues of people waiting to collect water? It is always usually outside low-cost apartments or in big housing areas. Whereas those guys who are living in rich areas, they don't queue up for water. Why is that so? There's a very good economic explanation for that. Simply because when all these guys build big bungalows, they ensure they have big water tanks. Big water tanks, not just one, but 2, 3. And these are running, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of gallons. So when the taps run dry, it's not a problem to them. Also, many of these modern houses, the big houses, they have a system where they collect rainwater what they call the harvest rainwater. And when it comes to dry season, they use that water to water the plants and so on, wash the cars. So when people actually see these people and, during a dry season and they are watering the garden, they get very angry. I get very angry. I say, hey, look, I don't even have water and this guy is watering his garden. But of course, it could very well be rainwater. But so the point I'm saying really is that because of the economic perspective, it's always the lower income group that is hit most because they don't have big water tanks. They rely on the water that's being pumped up to their apartments. And if you live on the 10th or 12th floor, coming down to fetch a few bottles or buckets of water and walking all the way up, I think that's not funny. It's not joke. It's no joke at all. It is difficult. So I think while we have this basic right, we have this expectation of a basic right to water, which I mentioned earlier, a right to clean water. But as time goes on and as society progresses, I think it's only reasonable. I don't think there's anything unreasonable for our expectations to increase. So as time goes by and as infrastructure gets better, my expectations go higher and I expect better service. So it's a progression. Now, the other question of whether or not there should be an increase in payment, really, I do not know whether there's ever been a survey done and do a comparative study of water, the cost of water in a country like Malaysia. Forget about Singapore, there are different examples, but let's say compared to other ASEAN countries, whether the cost of our processed water is low or is it reasonable, moderate? Maybe Ms. Punita or Ms. Sarah, you have the answer for that. But assuming that this, whatever we are paying, is reasonable, then of course, at the same time, you can't expect the sky. You can't expect free water when there is a cost. Now, that brings me to the other point, and this is also part of social, part of economy, and this is the legal aspect of things. The fact is that when I want to have water supply, I sign a contract, correct? I sign a form, I sign a contract. So I have actually a contract that is binding between the supplier and myself. And whenever there is a disruption of water, other than, within exceptions, force majeure and poor management or whatever, there's a breach of the contract. So when there's a breach of contract, I am within my rights to actually take the supplier to court. But then, of course, it depends how serious the problem is. And then they will say, oh, but you are one out of a million people. Oh, you're only one out of 100,000 people. How are you going to go to court? I'm not sure we are going to cover this later, but this is one topic which I would like to very quickly mention here. And this is the issue of strategic litigation. What this simply means is that the courts have been very slow to recognize public interest cases in court. And they will say, oh, you are a busybody. Others are not complaining. Why are you coming to court? You're the odd man out. But I think times have changed a lot and the perspectives of the courts have also changed, where now they don't adopt this busybody approach, but really whether you as an individual, out of many people, doesn't matter, but whether you have been affected to the extent that you can bring an action for yourself and to represent the general public. That's what we mean by strategic litigation. So coming back to this water supply thing, is that if there is a breach of contract, and let's say, if there's contamination by some real city people that contaminate water, they should be punished. There's no two ways about it in my books. But let's say it is something which is caused to nature. There's a drought, dry season. You can't complain. You can't say, hey, water supplier, why are you not giving me water when there's a shortage of water? So there are exceptions. But if it is poor management, because let's say 80% of the water is lost through broken pipes, then I say, look, why haven't you done something? Then they will turn around and say, we don't have the money to do that. Then I say, it's all part of management. Increase your rates if you have to, and you have to justify this, and not to say the money has gone out through corruption and so on and so on. But if the money is properly utilized, I think everyone realizes that there's no such thing as something for free, that's for sure. Okay, you have to pay for it. But we agree to pay what is reasonable and what is lawful. Thank you.
Okay. So talking about that, yes, the topic that you mentioned will be covered in our third series on consumer advocacy and awareness. And something that Haji Fauzi mentioned about the economic loss, actually when operators having water disruptions means they cannot actually charge people. They are doing additional work in providing the water will be covered in the next panel discussion. So let us take a couple of questions. I see here, we have here Dato' Lutut Gi. She was the former Chief Under Secretary of Kementerian KETA. That was before it became KASA now. So she actually said the same thing that you mentioned about people have to pay for the water. So there's no such thing as free water, but even though the water is a basic right. But she do mention, she feels that there is a need to improve the technical management of the water industry because she herself personally experienced 72 hours of water disruption. So that is something that is literally 3 days, maybe even more. So that is something that, of course, it's very technical, even though we're looking on the social part of it. 72 hours without water, socially, how does it affect? But thank you, Datuk, for joining the discussion and posing this question. And there was a question Ashikin asked, what can be done to curb the problems of people polluting, even though the laws are clear, there are heavy fines and jail terms, but still these things are happening again and again. So she posing this question to Datuk Ma.
Okay, thank you. The law is there. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a quick count of the applicable laws as far as water is concerned, I did a bit of accounting, not for this particular forum, but previously. And if not mistaken, I think there are about 11 laws that govern clean water supply. Yeah, and it ranges from, EQA, Environmental Quality Act, right up to a very serious Water Industry Services Act. Now, the law is there. I think what we are facing as far as contaminators are concerned, as far as people who pollute the rivers, is the enforcement. To be able to quickly identify the problem, which I think kudos must be given to a couple of the recent big cases. Sungai, was it not Sungai Kim? That took a bit of time, but I think Sungai Selangor, Sungai, was it Semenye? They identified the problem pretty quickly, and they got the guys who were at least allegedly responsible at that time, and they have taken them to court. They have claimed trial, so matters before the court. So I think while the law is there, it is very important to have quick enforcement, people on the ground to quickly identify the source of the pollution and swing into action and arrest these guys, because there's no two ways about it. You break the law and you affect so many people just because you think it is cheaper to dispose of it in the river than to go and send it to a proper dump site. For a few dollars, you want to make life miserable for everybody. I have absolutely no sympathy for these people. They should be, well, I should say, a matter of speech, yeah, say, look, send them to jail and throw away the key, because it's very, very serious. And I think the law has recognized this, and that, from fines to imprisonment, that in fact, it's gone so serious that if death is caused to somebody who pollutes the rivers, pollutes the water source, the penalty can be a death penalty. This is under, of course, the Water Services Industry Act. While I have my own views about death penalty, and Suhakam has a position on death penalty, we are against the death penalty, even if it is a discretionary death penalty. But I'm mentioning this to show that the law recognizes the seriousness of this. And this act was actually in 2006, a good 15 years ago, where they realized that, look, any contamination which causes death should be punishable with death penalty. Or if it's not a death penalty, then imprisonment of not more than 20 years and with whipping. So you can see the penalties are very serious. It's not a joking matter, and people must really take this seriously. And they can't hide behind the corporate shield and say, oh, I'm a director, it's a company who did this, it's the workers who did this. Gee, I think what was done well is that the directors have been identified in a couple of cases. They have been brought to court, and I think let them face the music and see whether prosecution is successful. Because you can't hide behind a corporate shield and say, look, I'm a director, I am not responsible, but at the end of the day, if the company makes a profit, I enjoy the profit. You can't have double standards like this. Sorry, so I think from the legal point of view, it's quite clear. The law is there. It's always a question of enforcement and to ensure that corruption doesn't seep in somewhere. Forgive the pun. There's no water seeping in, but corruption seeping in to spoil the whole process, and people get away. You know, you pay some corrupt money and you get away from responsibility. That is even worse, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dato'. So Ashikin, you have the response there. So even though it's slow, but it's happening, because compared to the initial cases where they're unable to identify or even bring someone, but not to charge them. But the recent case, they managed to do that. So things are happening despite it's slow. And I would like to pick another question from Dr. Chintu. He's a very powerful waterman from CASA. He have a question to all the panelists. That means I don't have to answer because I'm the moderator. Are you willing to pay for more? Are you willing to pay more for water? If yes, what would be the fair and justifiable price? So Haji Fauzi mesti setuju nak bayar lebih. Ini kita nak tahu jumlah aja. Haji Fauzi, you're on mute. Haji Fauzi, you're on mute, yeah.
Okay, basically memang kita setuju untuk membayar lebih. Kerana apa yang kita lihat sekarang, harga air yang kita bekalkan memang jauh berada di bawah paras yang sepatutnya. Even kalau kita lihat, ada setengah negeri, dia punya tarif air sejak tahun 80-an. We can imagine, even our inflation rate pun kalau kita kira setahun 3% on average pun dah, kalau 30 years kita dah boleh bayangkan berapa kos yang sepatutnya kita bayar. Dan satu lagi kalau kita lihat, proses untuk merawat air ni sangat bergantung kepada kualiti sumber air yang kita ada. Yang ini yang susah kita nak bandingkan antara negara. Kenapa negara sana kos rawatan rendah dan sebagainya. Tapi kalau kita tengok, sumber air yang kita ada di Malaysia ini sangat-sangat menyedihkan. Kerana kita terpaksa mengeluarkan kos yang tinggi untuk merawat air daripada sumber air yang kita ada kepada air yang boleh mencapai standard yang ditetapkan oleh Kementerian Kesihatan. Jadi yang ini yang selalunya kita menghadapi masalah. Bukan setakat kos rawatan yang tinggi yang terpaksa ditanggung, kita juga menanggung kos pengagihan air yang tinggi disebabkan oleh sumber-sumber air kita sekarang ini berada semakin jauh daripada kita. Banyak sungai-sungai yang ada di depan mata kita semuanya dah tak boleh digunakan dan dirawat untuk tujuan air minuman. Jadi kalau kita tengok even di Johor sendiri, kalau kita tengok di Johor Bahru terpaksa mengambil air daripada kota tinggi dan sebagainya. Sedangkan kalau kita tengok banyak sungai di Johor Bahru tu, kalau hujan lebat boleh banjir. Tapi air-air itu sebenarnya tidak sesuai lagi untuk kita rawat dan digunakan untuk tujuan air minum. Jadi kalau kita lihat, dalam industri air kita di Malaysia, kita merupakan regulated industry. Kita tidak boleh sewenang-wenangnya menaikkan tarif air dan sebagainya. Jadi biasanya tarif air ini akan dipertimbangkan ataupun dikaji oleh pihak SPAN sendiri, berdasarkan kepada kos operasi yang kita kemukakan. Jadi biasanya kalau kita lihat, semua negeri telah pun tertangguh banyak kali untuk menaikkan tarif. Jadi keadaan ini sebenarnya memberi kesan secara langsung kepada mutu perkhidmatan bekalan air itu sendiri disebabkan oleh kekangan keuangan dan sebagainya. Dengan infrastruktur kita yang uzur dan sebagainya, memang very difficult lah untuk kita mengurus bekalan air yang cekap dan berterusan. Kita bayangkan, kalau kita bayangkanlah infrastruktur bekalan air kita ni umpama kereta yang dah buruk lah. Anytime breakdown, anytime rosak dan sebagainya, dan memerlukan kos yang banyak untuk kita menyelenggara. Nak tukar kereta baru tak mampu pula, duit tak ada. Inilah masalah industri air yang sebenarnya yang apa yang kita lalui di Malaysia. Terima kasih.
Tapi macam mana susah pun saya tengok Ranhil Syarikat Air Johor bersama SPAN sometime last week menyediakan sambungan dan bekalan air kepada 2 keluarga di Pontian Johor, keluarga yang daif yang memang tak ada air, which is quite surprising lah in Malaysia. We still have people who do not have supply direct, and I read that mereka beli air daripada jiran. So So it's really like not because of they don't have water. It's not like mereka tak ada access kepada air. I guess this is more because of poverty issue ya Datuk Ma. Not really like no access because the neighbors has it. So I mean, Redhill still Syarikat Hijau managed still to do it. So Miss Sarah, how much are you willing to pay higher? If so, how much?
Okay, as a consumer, I will say, if can, I don't want to pay anything extra. Okay. Anything extra. So we want the water operator find out ways. So you want me to continue?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I want water operators to continue to find ways, how to improve the system and how to, overcome the NRW, which is sufficient, to supply water, and also take extra legal action on those polluters, which, causing all this disruption. And, I think it's really not fair to increase the cost to the consumers. But at the same time, if that is actually the cost, that the minimum cost that should be borne by consumer, it shouldn't be like very troublesome for the consumers. It shouldn't give a big impact for their, daily life or something like that. Increasing like 52 cents now, you say you want to increase it 2 ringgit 50 cents, that is too much. Okay, it need to be reasonable. Okay, it's what Datuk Ma said just now. Okay, so it should be reasonable, and whether it can, fit into their budget. I agree that, consumers can, buy internet. They can put in a mobile plan for 60 ringgit, but they can't even pay 20 ringgit water. Okay, that's what the consumer, we have that kind of consumers. And we also have consumers who, didn't pay their water bill because of COVID, lay off job and all that. And we also have consumers where, they didn't pay bill because they didn't receive bill for 6 months. And when there is a water cut, then only saying that, oh, I didn't receive my phone bill. So there are few types of consumers, and how do we convince them, on this increase of, water fare or water tariff. And here I also like to stress consumers, to start to save water. 2050, we might don't have water. Okay, if we don't start to change our behavior, change our, approach on saving water, and water is life.
Yeah, true. And Datuk Ma, to you.
Yes.
Are you willing to pay more?
Yes.
And how much?
Yes, I'm not sure how much. This will have to be on the cost factors and so on, the economics of running the supply. But I think I'm prepared to pay more if the reason for disruption is due to, say, poor equipment at treatment plants, very old pipes, and so on. And so to make sure to improve the infrastructure, and that's a cost to it, I think that's a reasonable cost. But at the end of the day, I would like to know where the money has gone. And if it's utilized lawfully, and for a specific purpose of improving a water supply, then by all means. But the quantum, how much, this will depend very much on the supply and demand and the numbers and so on. You will have to have proper accountants working on this to crunch the numbers. And I think the reports, the financial reports, must be audited transparently every year to ensure, to make sure that this money is all spent for improving services, and not because there's some payoff somewhere and the money has gone somewhere else. The other way of something which we have not actually seen is that little or no action has been taken against polluters that cause inconvenience and damage to others, and that is to take civil action. There's nothing to stop the authorities to sue the polluters and recover civil damages. Then this money can go to the suppliers to improve their facilities, because it's all part of the supply. process. Because you see, if when polluters are brought to court and they are charged in court for offences, there, unfortunately, whatever fine the court impose, 100,000, even $500,000, whatever, that fine will not go towards the water operators. That money goes to government. That goes towards revenue. But because we know the way operators are all being run, and in fact, but at the end of the day, really, it's a government that should be behind all the operators and to ensure that they have sufficient resources to get the process going. So I think the short answer is that yes, I'm prepared to pay more, but it has to be reasonable. I want to know where the money is going, and it should be a reasonable rate. But having said that, you can have a case where somebody has not been able to pay a water bill. Let's say currently, yeah, it's maybe $20 or whatever, and the person cannot pay up, and the water is disconnected. You'll be surprised why suppliers will disconnect a guy who owes a few dollars, but those that owe thousands and thousands of dollars, their suppliers never disconnected. But let's say the guy cannot afford to pay a few dollars and his water connection is disconnected. Well, in such circumstances, this can be seen as a breach of his human rights. Not because there's no supply, there is supply, but he cannot afford to pay and it's being disconnected. This can amount to a breach of his human rights. Thank you.
So just would like one to hear your view, Datuk Ma. Do you think Malaysia's water industry, how do you say Malaysia water industry is faring in terms of recognizing water as a human right? From your perspective, in a short 1 minute.
How do we say whether it is what? It is fair, is it?
How do you think Malaysia water industry is faring in terms of treating water as a basic human right?
I think so far...
what grade you will give? A is being excellent. E
well,
is
if it's
really
excellent, you won't get any disruption. And you have 27 cases in the state of Selangor, that is not excellent. But to say it should be 0, maybe that's unrealistic. So it should be somewhere. I think the smaller the number, the better. And I can only keep saying that we all have to be reasonable. You see, if somebody throws all the waste into the river and the operators cannot stop that, and the water is polluted, what else can they do? Yeah, and they have to shut down the process plant to avoid further contamination. So we have to accept that. But then the water supplier should very quickly identify the problem and make sure that the polluters are taken to court. No grounds for corruption. I keep mentioning this. Sorry, I think my message is very clear. There is absolutely there must be 0 tolerance towards corruption.
Okay. Thank you, Datuk. We have a lot of questions. Some of the questions are related to economic, asking about tariffs, the principles, comparison against other states and other countries. So these are the conversations that we're going to have in the next panel discussion. So please join us for the following panel discussion 2 weeks from now. And some of the questions that is asked, talking about water resource, quality of aging assets and all those things, we will touch in our 3rd series. So we will pick up all these questions. There are a lot of questions and a lot of feedback as well in the chat and Q&A box. Truly sorry we are unable to take all because we are past almost 8 minutes from our panel discussion time. So before we end today's panel discussion, would really love to hear from Haji Fauzi. What do you think society, daripada pandangan Haji Fauzi ataupun cadangan Haji Fauzi kepada masyarakat, apa cara yang mereka boleh guna untuk bersiap sedia in event of water disruption yang tidak dirancang? Because yang dirancang tak apa, memang either via Twitter or Facebook or text message kita akan dapat. So what you think society can do so that they are well prepared? Mereka boleh mitigate. Before we close the session, Haji Fauzi, to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, pertama kita sebagai consumer kena memainkan peranan kita untuk memastikan kita mempunyai tangki simpanan sebagaimana yang termaktub dalam water supply rules di bawah atas, yang mana minimum every premises mesti mempunyai tangki simpanan yang berkapasiti 24 jam penggunaan air. Jadi kalau kita ada kapasiti simpanan 24 jam untuk penggunaan normal, sekiranya berlaku gangguan bekalan air, kita mengubah cara penggunaan air kita dengan menjimatkan penggunaan air untuk penggunaan-penggunaan yang perlu saja. Saya rasa tangki simpanan kita akan boleh bertahan lebih daripada 24 jam. Ini yang paling penting sekali yang kita pastikan, kerana kita dapati banyak masalah yang timbul daripada aduan yang kita terima disebabkan oleh ketiadaan tangki simpanan di premis-premis yang terlibat. Jadi bila bekalan terputus, immediately bekalan air dia terputus terus, tanpa ada simpanan. Ini yang selalunya timbul masalah. Jadi sekiranya kita sama-sama memainkan peranan, maka kita akan dapat bertahan lebih lama semasa gangguan bekalan air. Dan yang keduanya ialah kita mengubah sikap cara kita penggunaan air. Kalau kita lihat di Singapura, dia menggunakan hanya 141 liter per head per day. Berbanding kita 230 liter per head per day. Jadi yang ini yang kita kena revisit balik cara kita menggunakan air. Kerana saya rasa cuaca kita sama, Singapura dengan Malaysia, tak banyak beza. Tapi mereka boleh hidup dengan hanya menggunakan 141 liter per head per day. Kalau kita lihat dari segi bisnes, kita suka orang pakai banyak air. Tapi kita melihat air adalah khazanah kita bersama yang perlu kita pelihara untuk generasi yang akan datang. Jadi sekiranya kita dapat menggunakan air dengan cara yang berhemah pada masa ini, maka kita akan dapat mewariskan sumber air kita kepada generasi kita yang akan datang. Okey, terima kasih.
Thank you, Haji Fauzi. So with that, I would like to thank all the three panelists, Datuk Ma, Haji Fauzi, Miss Sarel. Thank you very much for,
Thank you.
I'm very humbled listening to all of you, as well as the plenty of questions. My apologies, it's on my part, I unable to take so many questions. We have like 20 over questions here. So truly sorry about that. But some of the questions are related to the series that we are, to the panel discussions in the future sessions. We will pick it up. We will make sure that those questions are responded. With that, I would like to thank all the panelists. I would like to thank all the viewers, and do share Forum Air Malaysia's Facebook page so that you will be notified of the future events. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, Ms. Punita.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Selamat malam.
Bye.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we take a photograph?
Oh, that'd be good.
Yes, why not? Before we
So if maybe whoever participants are